All right, so I will start. This is session 3, creating post-secondary education and extracurricular occupations for young adults with neurodevelopmental disabilities. I have the pleasure of introducing Catherine Willer behind me. She's a new graduate from UNE, a graduate of the Maine Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental Disabilities program. She completed a year-long elective project on UNE Achieve. This is a developing transition program for young adults with disabilities at the University of New England on the Biddeford campus. Catherine is passionate about young adults with disabilities and helping them gain the skills to engage in work, education, leisure, social participation, and self-advocacy in the community. Kate Lucas is the training director of the Maine Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental Disabilities, or the LEND program, and a clinical professor of occupational therapy at UNE. Dr. Lucas has worked in promoting inclusive communities to support transition to adulthood for young adults with neurodevelopmental disabilities throughout the state of Maine. Welcome and thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine. Like Kate just said, I'm a new grad from UNE, so right off the bat, got this big presentation. So thank you everyone for coming. I'm super excited, a little nervous, but here we are. So I did a year-long project last year on transitions and post-secondary education and how important it is in the state of Maine and how there are not enough resources. So I really wanted to have a conversation with everyone about how we can do better as practitioners in the state and create these resources for our young adults with disabilities. So just a little bit introduction of me. I just graduated in May and I currently work at Sandcastle Clinical and Educational Services in Lewiston. So I work with the birth to 18 age range. My youngest currently on my caseload is 2 years old and my oldest is 13. And they are wonderful. I have been an OT for 3 months and I'm loving it so far. And my favorite fall occupation is I'm one of those people that I just want to drive and drive and drive. And I'm that annoying person that drives really slow to look at all the leaves. So I'm the one that gets honked at all the time, but that's me.
And I'm Catherine Lucas, and I am a clinical professor of occupational therapy. I've been an occupational therapist for 38 years. and I'm pleased in the last 7 years of my career to be the training director for the Maine Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. That's a lot to say. And that is a program that serves the whole state. And the idea is to train either students in their final year or early career professionals to work with complex clients. So clients on the autism spectrum and with complex cerebral palsy. And we bring trainees through a program that includes didactics, a really strong component in family-centered practice, where trainees are paired with families in the community. Advocacy efforts to the point of going to Washington, D.C. and really trying to develop leaders that we hope that you will see in the state as more and more when trainees graduate. So that is my new role.
Mm-hmm. So just because this is a round table, I would really love to know who's all in here. So if we could just quickly go around and everyone can introduce themselves, if they're comfortable, how long they've been in OT, where they currently work, and their favorite fall occupation.
I'm Kate. I currently work at Bridgeton Hospital, inpatient and outpatient, so a little bit of both. I'm learning hand therapy, so wish me luck. I've been an OT for just about 11 years. My favorite fall occupation, I think, is just having a nice campfire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I'm Tim. And I work in the school system in Lincoln. I have been an OT for 35 years. I can't use that. What's that?
Lincoln Schools is my old gig.
That's right. I have seen some old people.
Oh boy.
I am the king of insert open mic. And what is my favorite fall occupation? Yeah, being outside, just enjoying the outdoors, it's a beautiful state.
Molly, Maura, and I've been in the for a really long time.
Give a number.
I'm in the 40s.
Wow.
It's definitely 44. Let's just say. What'd you say, 40? I was thinking about 5 minutes ago. I used to work for the University of New England, which is a wonderful part of my career. And then I was able to beautifully make a nice shift to the Old Orchard Beach schools. And I happen to live in town, so it's just lovely. Been very good. I'm still practicing in the schools. I love OT so much. It's going to be difficult.
Yes.
So I need a good occupational therapist to help me with my next occupation. So let's see. Fall, mean everything. Being outside, breathing the air.
Mhm.
I get to be outside on the playground with the kids. Playing Foursquare is my new favorite thing.
I'm Lauren. I've been an OT for about 10 years. I spent my career as a school-based therapist and recently made the transition to higher ed. I teach pediatrics.
Nice.
And I really love fall camp.
I'm just thinking here. Sorry.
Yeah, let's go down there and then we'll come back up. Yeah.
I'm Nina. I work for Lincoln Health in St. Harbor at an outpatient facility doing mostly upper extremity, but also a little neuro. And I've been an OT for a year and a half. And my favorite fall occupation, I would say I have two: making apple crisp for an apple cinnamon cake and watching porn.
Oh.
I'm Maureen. I'm a librarian for the OT program at University of Southern Maine. So it's a great chance to meet all these cool OTs. Favorite fall occupation? So many. Oh, walking around crunching in the leaves.
Yes. Nice.
I'm Sue Alford, and I've been an OT at Stanton Building for 43 years. And my favorite, where am I currently working? Sorry, I'm currently working for Child Development Services in York County, working with 3 to 5-year-olds. And I absolutely love it, and no intention of retiring until the thought of getting up in the morning and working with a 3 to 5-year-old is not really a habit. But I don't think there's any intention. And my favorite fall occupation is enjoying the cooler weather.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and I'm starting my 21st year of practice as an OT. I work for Boston Public Schools, and my favorite fall occupation is going to pumpkin patch and making sure that your PowerPoint presentation shows up.
I'm Cheyenne. I'm actually a second year for the OTA program at ABCC. My current job is a case manager for a therapeutic foster care agency. And my favorite qualification is apple cinnamon.
I'm also at my second year of OTA school at ABCC. That's my full-time job. And my favorite fall occupation is
And what's your name?
Aiden.
Nice to meet you.
Chris Wilson. I'm currently at the University of New England. I've been an OT for 36 years. And my favorite fall occupation is watching my nephews play football.
You, Sandy.
I'm Sandy. I am currently per diem SNF and acute care. And I've been an OT for 4 years. And my favorite fall occupation is watching Halloween baking shows.
Nice.
I'm Joanna. I've been for 11 years. I'm currently working an independent contractor with contracts with CDF and Brooklyn. Honestly, 3 of my dreams. And my favorite qualification is coaching all good stuff.
I'm Taylor. I'm a self-employed pediatric OT, mostly working with ages 35 and contracted with students and patients. I've also been practicing for 11 years. My favorite fall occupation is medication type. I'm Jill Walker. I'm an occupational therapy assistant. I've been practicing OT for 16 years. Fall occupation, does turning on my heated blanket count? I like to do that. And I do get a lot of enjoyment out of going around and seeing the leaves change.
I'm Maggie, and I work in pediatric outpatient clinic with population. I've been in OT for almost 2 years, and my favorite occupation is carving.
I'm Courtney. I am an OT. I've been an OT for 3 years. I'm an OT at Burlington Day Treatment School in Portland. And my favorite fall occupation is
I'm Sandy. I currently work with St. Joseph's Health in Bangor. I've been an OT for 6 years, and this fall I've been enjoying.
Nice.
Okay, I'm Allie Kashadi. I'm a student, MSOT student at the University of New England. I'm a current lens trainee. I'm passionate about pediatrics and school-based. And my favorite fall occupation is I'm going with apple picking. I'm Emily. I'm also a student at UNE, a lens trainee. And I'm interested in pediatrics as well. My favorite fall occupation, I like to read all years, but for me, there was not one.
I am Dave. I work for Lewiston Sterling. I'm an OT for 26 years. My favorite occupation is supervising level 2 OT insurance. You know what I mean? Right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I know. My favorite one besides that is going to high school football games.
I'm Melissa Bliss. I'm with Maine Sites, which is the state assistive technology program. We are the gold presenters today, so or sponsors. Please stop by the table before you leave if you haven't learned about Maine Site. We're a kind of invaluable resource that really gets underused. And I have been an OT for 30-ish years. And my favorite fall occupation is putting my gardens to bed.
Nice. So I'm Kaylin, and I'm a second-year student in the entry-level doctorate program at USM. So I'm basically just a full-time student. That is my current job. And I would say my favorite fall occupation is I love enjoying the leaves. They change color, and then as they get super crispy on the ground, and they kind of scuttle along with the wind. I guess that's my favorite thing about fall.
Oh my gosh, thanks guys. That was awesome. I know all of you. Okay, so I want us to begin with talking about what are all the occupations that are important to young adults who are in the process or have already transitioned to young adulthood?
Just call them out. Home management.
Home management,
Really important one.
work,
Social relationships.
social relationships,
Financial management.
financial management,
Social media, probably.
use of social media, okay,
Community mobility.
community mobility. What about work?
Somebody did say work.
Oh,
What
gosh,
about education?
education, sorry.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we think that education is not an option for our some of our young people transitioning to adulthood, and oftentimes I think is overlooked as an option in transition planning.
So how does neurodiversity affect transition to adulthood?
limitations,
Cognitive,
cognitive limitations.
cognitive limitations, physical limitations,
And social. College is a very social.
Executive functioning.
executive functioning,
Anything for different resources?
needs for different resources,
Stigma,
stigma, yes,
Funding, complications.
funding,
Learning how to be their own advocate for their needs and whatever.
Okay.
Arena they're entering.
yes.
Self-advocacy, absolutely. Anxiety, as a college professor, I know the level of anxiety of many students, but sometimes neurodiverse students might have an even higher level of anxiety.
Mhm. Any others?
right now, it kind of feels like sometimes it's drive, the drive to put forth the effort to do it as well, is another role. Options.
Transportation.
Transportation,
Right? Family apprehension. Just like-
Exactly.
Yes.
There are some families that really support and others that are quite fearful of
Mhm.
the transition process. Of everything from safety to sexuality to a number of things. So families are really key in that piece.
Mhm.
And of course, there are occupational therapy services in most cases after young people graduate.
So my objectives, by the end of this roundtable discussion, participants will articulate the need for post-secondary occupational opportunities in education, leisure, social participation, ADLs and IADLs, work and community participation, especially in the state of Maine. Discuss current and emerging inclusive programs to support young adults in the state of Maine, and generate ideas to promote transition to adulthood in the practice and community of participants. So what is your experience with adult transition programs?
Those of you who are school-based OTs,
Mhm.
are you at the table when our students go through the transition process?
Absolutely not. Unless you're working with, so you're working with the students that aren't heading to university or
Mhm.
that want heading more towards independent living program.
Mhm.
Sorry, my words are dreamable, but I'll be around this time.
If they were on my caseload, I was there. Okay. I was at the transition meetings and planning.
Good,
Yeah.
good, but many times that caseload is gotten very small.
Mhm.
There may be a case for coming back in at transition time, and that's one of the things that we found in my doctoral work that might help. And this might be a time when we can start to do that when you're school-based.
Mhm.
It's funny, do you find that during that time, I always found some people, some OTs were hesitant to go in at that time. They almost felt like the work was done. And it was a difficult thing for some families to navigate, feeling like their child still needed services to persevere through that time, but being told that there wasn't a need. And that I found that very difficult to help families navigate, because that wasn't my case or anything like that, so.
There are some states, California being one, that have transition OTs now, the bigger school districts.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't need to feel like, oh, I, kind of seen this client for 4 years, now I'm going back in for their transition, but, there are some models that maybe we can look at, in that transition process.
So IDEA indicates that transition needs to be discussed at age 16 or by the age of 16. Do you believe that this is when it should be discussed? Should it be talked about earlier? Should it be talked about later? Yes. Earlier. Earlier the better. When do you think is a good time?
Honestly, as soon as they enter service. And it's going upon consent, because a lot of kids are like, why am I here? What do you do? So it's they need, because even though in the eyes of the law,
adults are the ones that make the decision. They need to be a part of that process instead of something being done onto them, but
Mhm.
proactive and learning how to take ownership of their therapy.
Very good.
Mhm.
Self-advocacy early on.
Yeah,
Chris?
that is a very good point. And if it would start earlier, because I was gonna actually say middle school. Because the student has some skills that, and that level of awareness, and maybe the parents are ready to think about it at least, so you could introduce it. But I do like that thought that it could be sprinkled in there at elementary level. So everybody's starting to think that way, because I think we all do, especially well, all of the children that are neurodiverse. We know that their pathway is going to be different. They're going to have to need support at different levels. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. Why not start talking about it?
At least planting seeds, that's what I used to call it.
Mhm.
Or, understanding that, again, the place of the school-based OT, everything's hung up on handwriting, or, or I had a child, hemiplegic, cerebral palsy, and autism, and she would have the ABA would join me in the sessions, and I'd like, yeah, the supervisor is talking about having her write, you focus on shoe tying. And I went to the child, I go, you want to learn how to tie your shoes? No, I'm like, there you go. And I go, and actually really, you need to start preparing her for puberty.
Mhm.
Because when I know for women, when, you have your first menstrual cycle, it's terrifying. And having autism on top of that is a whole other can of worms.
And sometimes, hygiene is very difficult for, neurodiverse clients. And want to get Chris, she had her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, before moving into academia, I also have been working for child development services and worked for 11 years, and I had this conversation with really young kids, because families have those questions, right? Like, you think about having a child and you have an expectation of what life will be like, and that's been altered for a lot of the families that we work with. And it's a different path, and so they still have the same questions, and so having those, once you've gotten to know families, being able to plant those seeds or sprinkle in those conversations or making space for questions about, I know your child's 3, but families are thinking about what the type doing is like. This is not what I thought it was gonna be. And so what would that be different? So I don't think you can start to.
Well, and also kind of listening to your clients. I had a client that cried, she had problems with her parents in middle school. And she said, I'll never be away from them. I'll never be able to be independent because I have a disability. And I just, like a little fire started up in my head and said, oh, yes, you can. And, we got into this whole thing, and she is living independently in the community. So, I think that finding those moments is another important thing.
Personally, where I work, I've had 5-year-olds ask me, like, am I going to be able to go to college? My older brother goes to college, and I've noticed that some educational staff have almost been like, oh, like, we'll talk about that later, and talk about it now. What do they want? They may be 5. Who cares if they want to be a superhero? Like, what can we do? How can we make that? And I think personally, in my opinion, I think it should be talked about as soon as they enter the school system. And how can we, as whether it's school-based OTs, outpatient OTs, how can we start that day one? What can I do to set you up for success? So what are some ways that OTs can weave transition programs into occupation-based intervention planning? Heavy question.
Well, I'll give you an example. In Raymond schools, Tim, we had a swim program, and it was kind of challenged by the administration, here for the swim program, while swimming, it's not school-based, but one of the things I said is it's a place where we can work on ADL as a school-based OT. We can do dressing, showering, all those aspects, and it's really important in the long run. And so really thinking about those sorts of, building those sorts of skills, because we have, young people who are graduating from high school who don't have those life skills because they weren't in a life skills program. And yet there were OTs in the schools that could have been providing those really occupation-based, thinking about the future.
We were fortunate in Old Orchard Beach last year to have one of the motels donate allow our class in high school to use the cottage. So we were able to do everything from laundry to food preparation to shopping to cleaning to everything that goes on when you're living. You know, it was just wonderful. They couldn't do it this year because of renovations or something, but we're using another space that's smaller and less well equipped. But working on all those kinds of daily life skills together as a group is empowering, I think.
Any schools doing like cottage industries where clients are selling things and having to deal with money and dealing with the public? That's another thing that's popping up at schools, everything from making greeting cards to making sandwiches for the staff. And, you know, they have to do the social piece and the money management piece and as well as the food preparation. So those are also programs that really help provide the transition.
We have something like that too. Our VOCTAC high school, they actually have a restaurant on their campus, and the students that are heading more towards like culinary arts, and they have them help run that restaurant. They make the food, they're handling the money, and they're even doing like the serving
And are OTs involved, you know?
you know what, there's a couple.
Most folk rehab programs really do welcome. I mean, if it's something like that's going on, it's been my experience that they really welcome occupational therapy.
And I think it's more or less like more of an, you know, I always call it like the on-demand consults that we make schools, OT aside, be like, hey, this is what's going on. You're like, okay, you do this, do this, do this. So they're but providing like formal services. No, I don't think so. I'm not at that school, but we do have something like that in Boston.
Cumberland schools had it, Bonnie Eagle had a greenhouse. It was run by an OT, by Claudia. She's retired. Yeah, Claudia Bales. And that goes back a little.
I think it was, I went to Bonnie Eagle. I think it was there when I was in school. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
I remember that.
So what are the programs that are available in Maine to support transition to adulthood?
Strive U, is that still in effect?
It is. I think this was SMCC now.
Okay.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Strive U in Portland. Okay.
Connected with Strive U.
I'm not familiar with that.
Tops.
Yeah, and that, I don't know, I think they do have some children with disabilities in PATH. That's right here, UNE Portland.
Is it? Well, I know that we have students from our life skills program that in PATH. There's the culinary arts or culinary arts. They do work food industry, and then there's also landscaping program as well.
Okay.
They also have an educational program, and they come into the preschool, but
What is it?
there's an educational track program.
Okay.
And they'll have the group house at the preschool, that's now 50-50 classroom. So the high school students will come into that classroom and participate in some of the teaching.
You know, some of them are young people with disabilities, or it's hard to know.
I don't know.
Just about rehab with JMGI, JMGI. When they have, rehab has a program where they have people that go into the high schools and work with kids, they mentor them. And they mentor them through the, like, probably junior and senior years, and then they can also stay with them when they go to college. They can be that connection to help them through.
And Book Rehab also has job coaches through a program at Maine Medical Center. That's a real niche in work, but important.
Yeah.
So on the Maine has a website organization called the Maine Parent Foundation, and they have a whole booklet on transition to adulthood. And there is a list of services that Maine offers. So the first one is the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, so the Department of Labor program, and that specifically works with people who have disabilities to get a job. And this helps everyone who has physical, cognitive, or emotional disabilities. And it offers pre-employment transition services for individuals that are 14 and older. There is Maine Unified Special Education Regulation, Chapter 101, Maine's Office of Aging and Disability Services. There's this really awesome program called High School and Beyond, and it's a transition service in Maine where parents of recent young adults who did transition give advice to families that are in that transition process and provide resources or any helpful tools or things that they found to be helpful for their child or not helpful. It's actually really cool. I looked through it and it's very eye-opening.
Just wanted to add, Maine Parent Federation is one of our vendors. So, please stop by there and ask about the transition program. They're doing a really nice job.
And then there's PACER's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment, ADA's National Network, Maine Autism Institute for Education and Research booklet, and Maine Site. And these all are on Maine Parent Foundation. There is a whole book dedicated for transition planning and for therapists, which is really awesome. So I highly encourage everyone to look through that.
There also is a new, this might come up, but the Down Syndrome Network sponsored a program at St. Joseph's College this summer. I don't know a lot about it, but it was kind of preparing young people for the college experience, or having some dorm experiences, some on-campus experiences. I don't know if they continued through that program or where they're at, but I did see information about that on social media.
So, should young people with disabilities go to college? And if so, how can occupational therapists support this? They like to, they should, yes.
Well, I want to say to our morning speaker, that, you know, it's an issue of occupational justice. That if you think of all the valuable things that you learn, both academic and other in college, to say that people with disabilities or a certain level of disability can't do that is really an issue of occupational justice.
Anyone have anything else they want to add?
I've got a quick story. It's one that these two know, but one of our lead clients is a young man who's in SMCC. He's got abilities. He's on the autism spectrum, has a little bit of cerebral palsy from strokes and some visual impairment, but is academically strong in some areas, but really weak in math. And he's found that if he went into the community college level, that they said that he had to pass a math competency exam, which he isn't able to do, and so then he can't go on if he doesn't pass that exam. So there are these obstacles in universities that I think are probably archaic. They probably go back, I don't know how far, but you know, things like that that are obstacles that those in higher education need to look at and start breaking down those barriers.
I have a former student that I had worked with, and she's the same. She has a math disability, and I had worked with her on some visual perception stuff. She was doing great. Went to high school, did phenomenally well, but was in a certain math track that was in accordance with the disability. She applied to UMaine, wanted to be a music major, and is so incredibly talented in the music area, and was turned away because she did not have the prerequisite math class that she needed. And even though her math class was not going to be detrimental to what her educational outcome would have been, they were unwilling to budge. And her mom advocated for her extremely well, but ended up she is now substitute teaching
Mm.
in school.
I guess when you ask that question, what can we do? And just hearing this discussion, there's well, we can be part of this,
Mhm.
but there is so much work to be done to
Mhm.
change the whole atmosphere, like how people look at people in higher education. There's a lot of work to be done.
There is, but let's get to it, you
There
know,
you go.
and there is, if you do look on AOTA's webpage and other special interest sections, there is a whole group of OTs that are post-secondary that are targeting that as an area of practice. So it's not our idea, it's out there. Yeah,
Honestly, from the research that I did,
you did.
we need to, we actually should be what they call disability specialists, access coordinators on university campuses. You know, hands down, community colleges tend to be a little bit more open to that, having, because if you look at like the job descriptions or a disability specialist, it's like, hello, you're singing the song of our profession, but they're like, one of the qualifications, master's degree in rehab counseling, special educational psychology, and the related field. And like, how do we? We need to find a way to get in, and some definitely are on there, but it's not what it should be, truly.
And even in occupational therapy education, we have technical standards, but those hold back. When I was in school, which was 8 eons ago, I know, but we had a friend that was a bilateral upper extremity amputee, and she was phenomenal. She could put on her prosthetics in record time, and she sewed and she did all this stuff, but she was turned down from our program. I know that was years ago, but because she didn't have 2 working arms. And so, you know, and I think we continue to, you know, how diverse is our OT workforce? And wouldn't it be inspirational if we had more OTs who have a disability experience and identity?
I went to UNE and I had a classmate who had cerebral palsy and, you know, I think she had some cognitive limitations, but really, you know, she had a lot of strengths as well, which I thought was amazing. That was.
You know, she's still practicing?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
And we do have some in the state, but not as many as we could have. And think of the important work in the modeling that those folks would do.
I currently have a student with a limb difference, and she is so phenomenal and just incredible. And the things that she can do are just, she blows my mind watching her in labs and things like that. But she's very worried about level 2s and going forward and what that's going to look like for her. And it's causing her quite a bit of anxiety to think about that and what that will look like. So you know,
She's a pioneer.
she is,
Yeah.
she's incredible. And I keep telling her that everybody will love you. You're amazing. And you can do everything that everybody else can do. And she can, but
Or if she
she
can't, you know, knowing her abilities and
Yeah.
figuring out a way to,
yeah, that she's perceiving a barrier and she's very worried about it.
One thing that I'm just thinking about as we're talking about this, and I know like a lot of secondary education and post-secondary education is so based in standards. And for whether, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, you know, that's a part of the world there. I was just remembering, like, I went to a college where they had like kind of a build your own degree program. Would that be like, if someone couldn't necessarily get in through the traditional methods, if there were more colleges that offered that, would that be a better alternative? Because unfortunately there are some standards that they won't relax for everyone because they, you know, they can't or whatever, but I was just thinking if that was an option, that could be
and online, I think, is an option too.
Right.
Unfortunately, though, that you miss the social
right.
aspect that can be so important. I was just gonna say, our keynote speaker this morning, who I thought was wonderful, and I'm so pleased that she's on AOTA's board of directors, but she talked about diversity in context of diversity, but she didn't talk about neurodiversity or you know, some of that disability culture. So that's should be part of it as well.
CSH 6 just recently I was looking it up on YouTube. I got it. Did a piece on a young man transitioning from school out through with the help of Woodford's Family Services. It's a really good spot. It really focuses on the family and the fears, because it's a big leap to whatever. I know, I'm not sure now, but it seems like 20 years ago or so, there were lots of programs for adults with significant neurodiversity challenges who wouldn't necessarily be interested in college, or I can't speak for them, but like community partners, you know, a lot of residential programming, and I'm not too sure where we are with all of that now either.
That kind of the new thing is integrated competitive employment and integrated competitive, you know, education. So I think that, you know, like creative work systems, you know,
Yes.
we've had that, you know, we had sheltered workshops, those of us who've been around for a while, you know, and no, you know, I think the disability community has said, you know, we don't want these separated programs that aren't specific to us, and that we want our hopes and dreams and accessibility to that, which others. Yeah.
So, just because of time, I'm gonna move on, sorry. But, is there a need for post-secondary, programs in Maine? Do you guys know what is available? So an active program, there's only one, and it is Strive U in Portland. However, UNE is currently in the process of making one, which is what I'll be presenting on in a second. And St. Joseph's College, like Dr. Lucas had brought up, are both the next two universities that are trying to start the post-secondary programs. So why are these programs important? So research has shown that adolescents with disabilities who are more self-determined when they leave school are more likely to be employed and live independently. Therefore, promoting self-determination is considered the best practice in transition services. So this increases individuals with disabilities, their independence and their confidence to create their own decisions. It helps them acquire the skills that they need to live as independently as possible, to have a productive life and a job. And only 60% of transition-aged youth with disabilities are employed for pay, compared with their peers without disabilities in the years immediately after their transition out of high school. However, transition programs can help set these individuals up for more success to get paid. Data has shown that program participants that are employed after graduation are at significantly higher rates of just getting paid and being hired for jobs than individuals with disabilities that do not attend a post-secondary program. So my leadership education and neurodevelopmental disabilities project, LEND. So what is the Maine LEND? Do you like to give it, or Sensei? I think you kind of did it.
Everybody's interested. We're still looking for trainees for next year, so.
I worked with Dr. Audrey Bartholomew, who is the special education director at UNE in their undergraduate program, and also the special education mentor in the LEND program. And she has been working on to start a program called UNE Achieve. And this program is to set up for kids with disabilities, specifically in Maine, to attend colleges, to live on campus, to learn all of the needs that they need to be able to live independently, and specifically with occupational therapists, hopefully as the instructors. So this program is hopefully going to start within the next 5 years, which is really awesome. Our new president at UNE is a huge advocate for the disabilities community, since his son has autism and has high needs, and he agrees that this is not, how do I word it, is not being accepted enough for post-secondary education in general. And there aren't any programs that are available in Maine but one, and it's in Portland, and they don't have, you know, everything. So I created a document for students who join the program to refer to about the university. You know, what can they do? What types of clubs can they do? Where can they live? Where can they work? How do they commute? How do they, you know, go to class? What majors are there? Do they want to create their own major? And I listed all the categories that I did and the goal of the program. And so the goal of this college-based transition program, UNE Achieve, will serve local young adults with disabilities to receive an education on UNE's campus in the form of a secondary transition service. There will be support on the college's campus through accessing typical college activities, such as the dining hall, athletics, social activities, and eventually coursework. And eventually, the goal is to have the university become a comprehensive college-based transition provider for high school students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Like I have said, currently in Maine, Southern Maine Community College has a program called Strive U, and this is a 2-year residential-based program that provides post-secondary education and training for young adults with developmental disabilities. However, this program is not full-time, and the goal of UNE Achieve is to be full-time on campus. So going from that, what is available to support young adults' occupation in the state? Think of the occupations, social participations, ADLs, IADLs, leisure, and overall independent living.
I know some like larger employers kind of participate in it, and I don't know what the name of it is, but they'll employ folks who might be of differing abilities, and maybe they have a different schedule for them or more mentorship. So I know that exists. I just don't know if it's formal program.
Port Resources has some programs, some group home programs, and some that includes some ADL, IADL programming, and has done some consultation with occupational therapy.
Goodwill Industries.
Very good.
Programs that teach art skills and then allow young adults to sell their art as artists, like Signal Works and the arts, and also the opportunity to participate in Special Olympics Maine, which is across the lifespan.
Yeah, another thing, art.
And I listed that Adaptive Outdoor Education Center. This is a great resource. It's in Brunswick, and it has programs all year long for individuals with disabilities to go to.
And throughout the state. It's based in Brunswick, but there are programs throughout the state. And leisure, I'm finding more and more young adults that, leisure, those outdoor leisure activities become kind of a focal point of their life. South Africa last year, that was a skier and traveled and really she kind of making a career of venturing toward the Olympics, whether she makes it or not.
Something that, and we just were talking about leisure activities, that I just was thinking about, it's not specifically marketed toward folks with disabilities, but there's a lot of the old train tracks that they're using with those, they're basically like recumbent bikes. So it would be something that could be very accessible to people regardless of their abilities. And it's kind of, you get to see some pretty things.
With older people too, it's kind of that universal, and that's ideal when you got the universal design that everyone can access, and creating those and supporting, communities.
So what can we as occupational therapists do better in the state of Maine to support young adults with disabilities with their occupations?
Knowing our resources, what resources already exist,
Mhm.
understanding transition resources. I think that has a lot of, I have most of the students on my caseload currently are in like high school. And so
Well, it's unusual, yeah.
right, and so what exists for them, in terms of I have a student who is going to high school, where if any opportunity, he's going to SMCC. I'm very, very proud of him. But like, I have other students who are working towards independent living or trying to find like the day program to be a part of, just like knowing what the resources are so that you can refer families to those resources. And in the long term, helping to establish programs and resources where they don't exist.
I was just gonna say that, like, we are very unique in that we do see a lot of gaps, and we have the flexibility to be able to fill those gaps a lot too. So, you know, kind of being brave and putting your neck out there if you have the resources to do so. And I mean, I feel like we've seen a lot across practice areas. I have a lot of therapy friends, whether it's OTs or otherwise, that are opening their own business to fill the gaps that are being very widely noticed. So I think that's a big thing too, is kind of just being brave about it if we can.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard today, I was hoping she'd be here, but I heard from a former UNE student that the Falmouth School just hired 5 specialized OTs. And that one of the areas, her areas with middle school behavioral, she called it, but she has a caseload of 8. And so I think that they're hiring OTs more in specialized services, and I think that may open up some opportunities to really say, okay, now we're going to work on transition. And because I think that one of the barriers, well, I did research, my doctoral research 2010, looked at the barriers to being the opportunities to, the barriers, one of the barriers we found is that school OTs aren't at the table, and that they think somebody else is doing it, and that they have such high caseloads. So I think that if things are changing a little bit right now, so that there's going to be more OTs, and this might be something that we could really capture. Like I said, in California, they have transition specialist OTs in the schools.
I think this like post-COVID culture is almost cultivating such an amazing opportunity, especially for students coming up through, because everybody's occupations changed and children were so largely impacted with that in schools, you're seeing just such this profound change in the way children are participating in all of their occupations, that we're the perfect people to address that. Just need to make sure that we have a seat at the table and we have an opportunity to tell everybody that we have that. And I think it's heading in a nice direction. It's cool to hear that 5 positions opened up for caseloads of 8. That's like the dream, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of is, and I think it allows you to do a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Now, are these, these OTs that were just recently hired, I mean, is it separate from the OT?
Yeah, it was a fleeting conversation,
Oh.
so but her name's Emma Robidoux, and
Okay.
she's here. You could find her. You could find her. It was one of those fleeting conversations that I had today, so I don't have much more information.
I just want to like add to that. So I live in Cumberland, and the Greeley schools hired 4 OTs mainly because they could not fill the ed tech positions. So the OTs have caseloads of like 4 or 6 kids, and I haven't spoken to any of them, but I know that some of the other staff are wondering if they're going to be bored. But I think that this is a good conversation for me to hear, because I think that the kids they're working with are younger, but they would be able to facilitate transition a lot better if they had a lot more time.
I think that's interesting. I wonder, are they being paid as OTs or they're being paid as ed tech?
They're being paid as OTs, they have, but they have a
That's
tiny
wonderful.
caseload.
That's wonderful, and what an opportunity. By the way, Cumberland was where, I don't know if they still have it, but they were doing cottage industry with older kids.
I'm not sure I should check it, yeah.
They
Well,
were
a
doing
lot
that
of
in
these have
2010.
passed. So,
Yeah.
No.
That's really, you can see, the ground is right.
I think too, if I could just say, I know at Main State we are charged with doing some training for advocacy around transition. And a lot of that has to do with the assistive technologies and adaptive equipment that might actually belong to the schools. So really looking at what happens when you're planning for your AT, for your students, especially as they get into high school, so that if, say, they get a piece of AT they use and they're going to need to use after they graduate, but it belongs to the school system, plan ahead so that they don't just like, it does happen, they just leave school and then, or they get to age 21 and then they just fall through again.
Yep.
That's an important thing. I do want to put in a plug for you too, that maybe site offers some apps or knows about apps. And you know, that's another avenue like for clients that need a lot of queuing. There are apps that will do that queuing for them so the parents or other people don't have to do it, which is a real boost of independence.
So how will you support transition to adulthood in Maine over the next year? Think of the kids you work with. Oh, yes.
My marketing project right now is the conference room. I there at 3. If you have any more questions, I have answers to that. But my idea is a gardening group for adults with intellectual disabilities, neurodiversity. But it's a job kind of training. The idea would be to have individuals come in and work on job skills like growing plants, taking them into the community and donating, or just working on learning how to transition into like a workforce or a volunteer setting and getting them involved. So I just think this is so nice. I wish I heard this while I was doing this. This is really helping me a lot.
Yeah, and I'll put in a plug for volunteer work too. I mean, there are so many really capable people with disabilities, young people in the community who aren't working at all. And sometimes a volunteer opportunity can really be meaningful and engaging and might lead to something else. And so for those folks doing volunteer work, I think is a sometimes important first step, although we'd love to have competitive employment.
You know, does everybody know about the Monarch School in New Hampshire, where Kathleen Perry developed a horticultural program? So you can see, and there's videos on YouTube, and you can contact her. She's a lovely person. And the students there at the school do have significant neuro diversity challenges, and they're doing a full-on greenhouses and selling and all the good with it. And it's very exciting.
Oh, gosh.
I think we're
So what you're gonna do is very exciting for me.
well, we expect this from all of them.
So these are 2 resources I really wanted to point out for you guys to have. The AOTA Transition for Children and Youth and the Maine Parent Federation on Post-Secondary Education. I also have more resources on the handout. These are my references. And ooh, does anyone have any questions?
Let's hear it for Catherine.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.